The council chamber was silent. Ambassador Music, Alina Vasquez stood. In the center of the massive room, her hands clasped behind her back, above her the dome ceiling displayed the stars of 1,000 worlds around her. Seated on platforms that rose like stone cliffs were the representatives of the Galactic Council. 43 species. Hundreds of years of history, and not one of them trusted humanity. Alina had known this meeting would be difficult, but she had hoped foolishly. Perhaps that 300 years of patience would count for something. Ambassador Vasquez, said Council Leader Thorn, his voice echoing through the chamber. The tall, gray-skinned Valkyrie leaned forward, his golden eyes fixed on her. We have reviewed your petition again, Alina said. Nothing. She waited. Humanity has applied for council membership 17 times. Thorn continued, each time you have been denied. Do you know why I have? Read the official reports, Alina said calmly. Then you know the answer. Then's voice was cold. Humanity is too young, too aggressive, too unpredictable. You wage wars among yourselves. You colonize without permission. You expand without asking. You do not follow the rules. We have followed every rule you gave us, Alina said, for 3 centuries. And yet, said another voice, you still do not understand your place. Alina turned. The speaker was a reptilian creature with scales like polished copper. His name was Savick, and he was the Valkyrie Dominion's chief strategist. Your fleets are too large, Savick said. Your colonies are too many. Your people are too ambitious. The council believes it is time for humanity to show humility. Alina felt a cold weight settle in her chest. What does that mean? Then stood. The chamber fell silent. The council has prepared a proposal, he said. If humanity wishes to join, you must first prove that you are willing to cooperate, to obey, to serve the greater good. Holographic document appeared in the air before Alina. She stepped forward and began to read. Her face did not change, but inside her heart turned to ice. Proposal was not a negotiation. It was a demand. Humanity would surrender 70% of its military fleet. Humanity would abandon 12 of its outer colonies. Humanity would accept Valkyrie oversight on all trade, all diplomacy, all expansion. Humanity would, in every way that mattered, become a vassal state. Alina read it twice, then she looked up at Thorn. This is not membership, she said quietly. This is slavery. It is survival. Thorn said, the galaxy is dangerous. Ambassador, without the council's protection, humanity will not last another century. We are offering you a future. All we ask is that you accept your place in it. Alina stared at him for a long moment, then she smiled. It was a small smile, thin, cold, and it made every representative in the chamber shift uncomfortably. I need to consult with my government, Alina said. Of course. Then said, you have 48 hours to respond. If you refuse, the council will consider humanity rogue state, and rogue states do not last long in this galaxy. Alina nodded. She turned and walked toward the exit. Behind her, the council members whispered to one another. Some looked relieved, others looked disappointed. A few looked hungry. None of them noticed the message Alina sent as she stepped through the doorway. 3 hours later, the Valkyrie war fleet dropped out of hyperspace above the human colony of New Terra. It was a small world, only 12 million people. Farms, mines, research stations. No military presence. No defenses. Perfect. Admiral Carveth stood on the bridge of the warship Eternal Judgment and watched the planet turn slowly on. The view screen, send the message, he said. The communications officer obeyed. Across New Terra, every screen, every radio, every device lit up with the same transmission. People of New Terra, said a Valkyrie voice. By order of the Galactic Council, this colony is now under protective custody. All residents are to remain in their homes. Any resistance will be met with force. This is for your safety. Do not be afraid. Carveth smiled. Within the hour, Valkyrie soldiers were landing in the capital city. Within 2 hours, they had taken control of the spaceport, the power grid, and the communication network. By nightfall, New Terra was occupied. And it was not alone. 2 other colonies, Aerodani Station and Juno's landing, fell the same way. No warning. No resistance. Just quiet, efficient occupation. 40 million humans taken hostage in a single day. The Council called it protective intervention. Humanity called it an act of war. But Elena Vasquez said nothing. She simply boarded her ship and returned to Earth. And as she flew through the stars, she thought about the Council's mistake. They believed humanity would beg. They believed humanity would surrender. They believed that fear was enough. But they had forgotten something. Humanity did not beg anymore. Not after 300 years of rejection. Not after being treated like children. Not after being told to kneel. The Council had wanted to see humility. Instead, they were about to see something far more dangerous. They were about to see what happened when humanity stopped asking for permission. The emergency session of the United Human Assembly lasted 14 minutes. There was no debate, no speeches, no long discussions about diplomacy or peace or the cost of war. President Sarah Chen stood at the podium and said 5 words: they have taken our people. The vote was unanimous. Within an hour, every human military base in the galaxy went a full alert. Within 2 hours, the fleet mobilization orders went out. Within 4 hours, 300 warships were moving toward the occupied colonies. But that was just the beginning, because humanity had spent 300 years preparing for this moment. Admiral James Corr stood on the bridge of the battleship, indomitable, and watched the tactical display around him. His fleet moved through hyperspace like a pack of wolves, closing in on prey. Status report, he said. All ships accounted for, sir, said his executive officer. Will reach New Terra in 20 minutes. Corr nodded. He looked at the communications officer. Any response from the Valkyrie? Yes, sir. They're demanding we turn back. They say any military action be considered an act of aggression against the Galactic Council. Corr smiled. It was not a kind smile. Tell them we don't negotiate with kidnappers, he said. The officer hesitated. Sir, that message will send it. The officer obeyed. Corr turned back to the tactical display. He had been in the Navy for 40 years. He had fought pirates, raiders, and rebels, but he had never fought a war like this. This was not about territory. This was not about resources. This was about a message. For 300 years, humanity had played by the rules. They had begged. They had negotiated. They had waited patiently for the Council to acknowledge them as equals. And the Council had answered with chains. Well, Corr thought, let's see how they like our answer. above New Terra. Admiral Carveth was not worried. He stood on the bridge of the Eternal Judgment and watched the human fleet drop out of hyperspace. 300 ships. Impressive for such a young species, but the Valkyrie fleet had 500 ships, better weapons, better shields, better training. They're hailing us, said the communications officer. Ignore it, Carveth said. Prepare to fire. A warning shot. Show them what happens when children play with fire. But before the weapons officer could act, something strange happened. The human fleet did not advance. Instead, they simply stopped. Carveth frowned. What are they doing? Unknown, sir, said the tactical officer. They're holding position at maximum weapons range. They're not. The officer stopped. On the tactical display, new contacts were appearing. Hundreds of them. What is that? Carveth demanded. The tactical officer's voice was shaking. Sir, those are human ships, but they're not military vessels. They're cargo ships, mining ships, colony transports. They're everywhere, Carveth whispered. He was right. Across the system, civilian ships were dropping out of hyperspace. Thousands of them. They moved into orbit around New Terra, forming a wall between the Valkyrie fleet and the planet below. Sir, said the communications officer, we're receiving a message from the human fleet. Play it. The voice that came through was calm, cold, unmistakably human. Admiral Carveth, this is Admiral James Corps of the United Human Navy. You have 24 hours to withdraw your forces from New Terra and release all civilians. If you refuse, we will remove you by force. If you fire on our civilian ships, we will consider it an act of genocide. And if you think we are bluffing. There was a pause. Then Corps' voice continued. Then please, by all means, find out. The transmission ended. Carveth stared at the viewscreen around him. His officers waited for orders. He had expected the humans to charge in, guns blazing. He had expected anger, threats, desperation. He had not expected this. The humans had turned their own people into a shield. They had filled the space around New Terra with thousands of unarmed ships, daring the Valkyrie to fire. If Carveth attacked, he would have to kill civilians, thousands of them, maybe millions. And the humans would use that as justification to destroy the Valkyrie fleet. It was brilliant. It was ruthless. And it was exactly what Carveth would have done. He opened a channel to the Council headquarters. We have a problem, he said. On Earth, Elena Vasquez stood in the war room watching the live feed from New Terra. Around her, military officers and government officials stared at the screens in silence. They're not withdrawing, said one of the generals. The Valkyrie fleet is still in orbit. They won't withdraw, Elena said quietly. Not yet. They're waiting for orders from the Council, and if the Council orders them to attack, Elena smiled. It was the same cold smile she had given in the Council chamber. Then they'll learn what happens when you corner a human. The general looked at her. What do you mean? Elena turned to face him. For 300 years, we begged them to see us as equals. We asked for peace. We asked for respect. We asked for a place at the table. She paused. We're done asking. The general nodded slowly. And if they refuse to release the hostages? Elena's eyes were hard. Then we remind them why every predator in Earth's history learned to fear humanity. The room was silent. On the screen, the human fleet waited. And across the galaxy, humanity held its breath. The Galactic Council convened. Emergency session. Council leader Thorn stood at the center of the chamber, his golden eyes scanning the representatives. Around him, every species was present. Every face showed concern. The humans have deployed their fleet, Thorn said. They have surrounded New Terra with civilian vessels. They are demanding we withdraw, and if we refuse, Astacrin, representative, then they will attack, said Savick. Our intelligence suggests they are prepared for total war. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. This is madness, said a Centauri delegate, her voice sharp. They cannot win against the entire council. They are one species. We are 43. They do not need to win, said a quiet voice. Everyone turned. The speaker was Ambassador Yales of the Arcturan Collective, one of the oldest and most respected members of the council. His kind have been exploring the galaxy for 10,000 years. They only need to make us bleed, Yales continued, and they will. Admiral Carva's report is clear. The humans have placed thousands of civilian ships between our fleet and the planet. If we fire, we commit mass murder. If we do not fire, we appear weak. Either way, humanity wins. Then what do you suggest? Thorn demanded. Yales looked at him with ancient, tired eyes. I suggest we release the hostages and withdraw immediately. The chamber erupted. That is surrender, shouted Savick. That is wisdom, Yales said calmly. We made a mistake. We believed humanity would kneel. Instead, we have awakened something we do not understand. They are children, then said a young species playing at war. No, Yales said softly, they are survivors. And survivors do not kneel. They endure. They adapt, they fight. He paused. We have forgotten what that looks like. Above New Terra, Admiral Carveth received his orders 23 hours and 58 minutes after the human ultimatum. The council had voted barely. 22 species voted to withdraw. 21 voted to attack. It was the narrowest decision in council history. Carveth read the message 3 times, then he opened a channel to the human fleet. Admiral Core, he said, this is Admiral Carveth. We are withdrawing our forces. The civilians will be released within the hour. There was a long pause, then Core's voice came through, cold and flat. You have 1 hour. If a single human is harmed, we will hunt you to the edge of the galaxy. The transmission ended. Carveth closed his eyes. He had been a warrior for 50 years. He had fought in a dozen campaigns. He had won medals, honors, respect. But today, for the first time in his life, he felt something he had never felt before. Fear, not of death, not of defeat, fear of what humanity would become. 72 hours later, the council chamber was nearly empty. Only a handful of representatives remained. The rest had returned to their worlds, uncertain and afraid. Ambassador Elena Vasquez stood in the center of the room, exactly where she had stood 3 days ago, but everything had changed. Ambassador, said Thorn. His voice was tired, defeated. The council wishes to apologize. Elena said nothing. We made an error in judgment, Thorn continued. We believe that humanity needed to be controlled. We see now that this was a mistake. Yes, Elena said quietly. It was then. Flinched. The council is prepared to offer humanity full membership, he said. No conditions. No restrictions. You will have a seat at this table. You will have a voice. You will be our equals. Elena looked at him for a long moment, then she shook her head. No. The word fell like a stone. Thorn blinked to what? We do not want your seat, Elena said. Not anymore. But this is what you asked for 300 years. For 300 years, we begged, Elena interrupted. We asked politely, we followed your rules, we tried to prove ourselves worthy. She stepped forward, and you answered by taking our people hostage. Thorn said nothing. You thought we would kneel, Elena continued. You thought fear would break us, but you were wrong. You did not break us. You woke us up. Her voice was calm, steady, and utterly terrifying. Humanity does not need the council anymore. We will make our own alliances. We will build our own future, and if you ever threaten our people again, she leaned forward, we will burn your fleets to ash and scatter them across the stars. The chamber was silent. Elena turned and walked toward the exit. Ambassador Thorn called after her. What will you do now? Elena stopped at the doorway. She looked back over her shoulder. We're going to show the galaxy what humanity really is. And what is that? Elena smiled. Not your victim, not your servant, not your pet. She paused. We are the storm you should never have summoned, and then she was gone. Epilogue. Within a year, 15 species left the Galactic Council to form trade agreements with humanity. Within 5 years, humanity had established the largest independent coalition in galactic history. Within 10 years, the Council was irrelevant, and the Valkyrie Dominion, once the most powerful force in the galaxy, spent the next century watching as humanity rose. Not as conquerors, not as tyrants, but as the one thing the Council had never allowed them to be, equals. The Council had wanted to end discussions. Instead, they started a revolution, and across the galaxy, every species learned the same lesson: never mistake patience for weakness, never mistake silence for surrender, and never ever threaten a human's family. Because when humanity stops asking, the galaxy listens.